Hi, I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all over the world about parenting, good communication, how to build strong family relationships, all through the lens of the principle self-government. And in this video, we're talking about what is the difference between ADD and ADHD. Most people have heard of the terms ADD and ADHD, but oftentimes think of them as the same. They are not the same thing. In fact, they are very different from each other. In this video, we're going to be talking about the differences and similarities between ADD and ADHD, and I'm going to be sharing some key things that you can do if you are a person with ADD or ADHD, or if you're parenting a person with ADD or ADHD, to help that person have good communication, conquer some of that tendency to maybe get distracted or discouraged, overwhelmed, some of the things that occur with ADD and ADHD. So let's talk about ADD. ADD is an acronym that stands for Attention Deficit Disorder. And when a person has attention deficit disorder, oftentimes it is signified by a person being a little bit depressed sometimes. Sometimes they come across as lazy. Many people with attention deficit disorder get overwhelmed easily or stressed easily, so higher levels of anxiety are often part of attention deficit disorder. ADD is a disorder that actually can be developed by genetics. It can also be developed because of a person's nurture or their surroundings and what maybe they had happen to them or the way they learned to process. But it's usually considered to be a neurobiological disorder, which means that a person is not neurotypical in their brain. The way they see things and process things is a little bit different. So what about ADHD then? What is the difference between ADD and ADHD? So let's first talk about what is ADHD. It is Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. So because it has three of the same words in it as ADD, I think many people think of it as the same, but actually it can be very different. In fact, the symptoms of ADHD are oftentimes a lot more volatile and extreme than the symptoms that you might notice when a person has ADD. One of the biggest differences between a person with ADD and ADHD is ADHD people get distracted. So ADD people might overfocus on something, like they might have a situation where they have anxiety about a certain thing and they have a tendency to think about it a lot. That can happen to a person with ADHD, but also the person with ADHD is going to have a tendency to get distracted. So they either get distracted a lot and hyper-focused on certain things, or they seem sometimes even like they're distracted all the time. So there are different ways that people show that they have ADHD. Some people seem constantly distracted, and some people seem distracted unless it is a particular area that they find incredibly interesting, and then they will hyper focus in. So there might be someone who is incredible at shooting a basketball because they have put so much thought and energy into it, and when they are shooting a basketball, they are in a state of complete focus. But when they're reading a book or sitting in class, they may be completely distracted because that's not something that their brain feels like it's a high priority to process or focus on. So it's not that the person thinks the school doesn't matter or the class doesn't matter. It's that they actually have a lower cognitive ability to focus, meaning their prefrontal cortex actually has a hard time staying focused in. Unless it has, for some reason, attached an amount of focus to a specific topic, then the person has to work very hard to stay focused in. And that's why a lot of people will turn to medications, because some of the medications can help a person have an easier time going into that focused part of the brain, or at the very least be able to force themselves to focus a little bit easier. Many people who have ADHD come across as very impulsive. They jump from one thing to another. They oftentimes blurt out things in the middle of a discussion, so they can seem really rude, bossy, and controlling. One of the reasons they start blurting things out or start distracting everybody else in a group is because in their brains they have an atypical connection with the reward center that's in their brains. So there's a part of your brain that gives you a feeling of satisfaction or reward when you do something or when you experience something. Well, when a person with ADHD is heard, takes control, or tries to get a rise out of somebody else, or chooses to be negative when somebody else is being positive just to be different, that gives them this feeling of reward, like they've done something powerful or good. So oftentimes people who have ADHD also look like people who have ODD, or oppositional defiant disorder. So they oftentimes are really oppositional. This doesn't mean they necessarily have oppositional defiant disorder, however. I've got more things to share with you about ADHD, but before I do, click subscribe now. This channel is dedicated to teaching you the things that you need to find self-government in your home and in your family relationships. And the children can learn self-government. And I don't want you to miss all of the great stuff that comes out daily on this channel. So click subscribe now, and don't forget that notification bell so that you get notified when new stuff comes out as well. People with ADHD oftentimes overestimate the value of short-term rewards with long-term rewards. So many people will say, you know what, I'm going to exercise because over time, if I exercise, then I know that maybe I will be fit and strong, healthy, maybe lose weight. A person with ADHD has a really hard time saying no to the brownie or to the chocolate bar. Do I like chocolate? I'm only coming up with chocolate things. Ice cream, maybe. They have a hard time saying no because that's a short-term reward that they really want. And thinking ahead to possibly being more healthy down the road just doesn't seem as important as that taste of sugar right in the minute. So when a person presents to them some long-term view, like a family vision of who they want to become, which is something that I actually teach parents how to teach their children, sometimes they have a hard time holding on to that at first. It just seems too far out in the distance, and they don't see the point of it when they want to get attention or have those sibling fights right in the minute. People with ADHD can experience depression, just like people with ADD can experience depression. So that's one thing that they share in common. But there are a lot of differences, such as a person with ADHD has a hard time staying focused and staying motivated. So they may start out motivated on something, but they lose their motivation very quickly. Because of the hard time that they have focusing, they oftentimes come across as forgetful. So they can seem very much like they don't care, because you may tell them they need to do something and they don't do it. But this isn't because they don't care, it's honestly because they just lost track of whatever it was that they should have been focusing on. People with ADHD get bored really fast. That's a key thing. In fact, because of that boredom, that's usually why they start looking for pleasure in a way that's this short-term reward, which ends up annoying everyone else around. Something about people with ADHD that you might not know is that oftentimes people with ADHD are moody. So they seem like things are not okay, and they will try to manipulate and control with emotions. They have very acute feelings. And so things like frustration, boredom, or feeling like they're not heard or appreciated seem to be more intense for a person that has ADHD than just your regular run-of-the-mill person who might think, that person's not really listening to me right now. A person with ADHD all of a sudden goes inside really deep and is like, they're not listening to me, they don't care, and all of a sudden they start having this sea of emotion going on the inside as they will retreat from everybody else. So oftentimes people with ADHD seem like they're trying to emotionally manipulate or control other people. So with this short attention span, increased feelings, abnormal reward center of the brain, as well as depression that is characterized in ADHD as well as ADD, what is a parent to do? What's a teacher to do? Or if you're the person, what are you to do if you are experiencing these types of symptoms and behaviors? Let's talk about that. So just because a person with ADHD doesn't like to plan or look ahead, they don't really hold on to that long-term view, that doesn't mean you leave long-term view out of the picture. What that means is you have to talk more about long-term view. Have good, meaningful discussions about it and start to focus on some of the details that matter in the minute, that relate to that long-term view. So in my book, Parenting a House United, I talk about creating a family vision. In fact, this is one of the first things that I tell people to do before I get to all the skills and stuff that they want to learn about solving the bad behaviors. Because the family has to know why. They've got to understand a reason why they should care about learning self-government, changing the way they communicate, and improving their relationships. This is especially important for a person with ADD who has a tendency to focus on the negative, and for a person with ADHD who has a tendency to focus on what's happening right now and not something for the future. So what you do is you create a vision of the future. You're going to start with like a 10 or 20-year vision of the future. I talk about how to do that in this book so that it really can stick. Then you bring it into the present. So you say, okay, so if our view for 20 years ahead of time is this certain type of a feeling on Christmas Eve in our family, how are we going to experience that every day? How are we going to experience that today or this week? Now, I talk about having regular family activities. These regular family activities should simulate the feeling that you want to have in your family vision in that 10 or 20-year time period in the future. Those family activities also help you practice for better daily interactions as well. So each day you can bring the family back to who are we becoming as a family? Or what do we want our relationships to be like? Remember? Oh yeah, did that moment feel like that family activity we had on Monday? Or did that moment feel like the type of family that we want to have for our 20-year vision of our Christmas Eve celebration? And if the answer is no, then we know we need a fix. Now, this brings me into kind of the big things that people are looking for in the teaching self-government approach, and that is, how do you fix the problems? So I have these other books that I've written for children. They're probably for children about ages 12 and under, and they teach what are called the 4 basic skills. Now, the 4 basic skills are for children of all ages. I raised my children on the skills as well as all of the foster children that I did therapeutic treatment care for a number of years. They were all between the ages of 12 and 18. These are just adult skills, actually. They're adult skill sets, but these make it fun to teach. The 4 basic skills are following instructions, accepting no answers and criticism, accepting consequences, and disagreeing appropriately. Each one of those 4 basic skills has steps associated with it. For instance, to follow instructions, there are 5 steps. So they can look at their hand and remember, oh yeah, I've got to do one thing for each finger. So what are the 5 steps? You look at the person, you keep a calm face, voice, and body. You say okay or ask to disagree appropriately. That's one of our other skills, right? Then you do the task immediately and then check back. So when a person can do all 5 of those steps, then they are following instructions. But if they don't do all 5 of the steps, meaning if they don't have a calm face, voice, and body, or they don't check back afterward, then that person is not following instructions and parents need to do a correction. The same is for all 4 of the 4 basic skills. If they miss one of the steps in those 4 basic skills, then parents need to be prepared to do a really effective, positive, and calm correction. In this book, I do talk about how to do good, calm, effective corrections. In fact, I talk about 5 different teaching styles that parents can use to help teach their children self-government in a calm way. Many people think that in order to positively parent your child, that you need to be permissive and just kind of let the child do whatever they want to do. That spells disaster in a home where a child is just developmentally normal, because children need boundaries, they need leadership from their parents, they need to learn skills and have skill development. All of those things need to occur within the parent-child relationship. But if your child has ADD or ADHD, or if you have it yourself and you choose not to correct any of the problems, the outbursts, the behaviors that aren't calm, then you really have a problem on your hands. That person will not be able to associate well with others. They will try to dominate groups, not maintain friendships, and have destroyed relationships again and again, especially a person with ADHD. So you need to correct things for the child. That actually is a positive thing to do. It's merciful, kind, and exactly what a good parent does. But it doesn't have to be done negatively. A correction does not have to be a negative thing. So as a parent, try to decide right now, when I correct my children, this isn't negative. It's not bad. It's not because they're bad or they've earned something bad, but it's because they just need my help. I'm the parent. I'm here for them. I'm ready. So everyone needs to understand being corrected is just part of learning. And that's why there's that skill called accepting consequences, which is a vital part of learning self-government. There are so many more things that I could teach you about self-government, and I think one of the best places to start is with the full-length class that I have as a video here on YouTube called The Not So Known Secret for Parenting Success. In that video, I'll talk more about the skills and principles needed to correct those negative behavior. And I want you to know that with all of the foster children that came to my home, the majority of them had ADD or ADHD or both, as well as other non-neurotypical things. And these are the skills and principles that I used to help them. So they do work no matter the age. Go to The Not So Known Secret for Parenting Success now. I'll see you there.